I've had a lot of lived experience as to tap into my mission and my values and learn to put the focus on the moments that matter, so that I can be the person I want to be for myself, for my family, for my business, and for my friends.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Relaunch podcast. And when we're talking about women that we admire and lifestyles that we admire, I got to tell you, the guest I have today is going to be somebody that will give you some really scary information out there, but also the solutions of what you can do when it has to do with online kids, but also the relaunch that she had that has now been so impactful in her life. Who I'm talking about is Miss Lisa Thie. She's a top 50 global thought leader for AI, artificial intelligence, privacy, and safety, with demonstrated experience in delivering, you're talking solving those complex business, technology, governments, privacy, risks, you name it. In the world right now, wow. We need more people like Lisa, but she is spearheading such a huge charge. She was just recently named to the 2022 top 100 brilliant women in AI ethics global list. Can we do a shout out to you right now? But I also want to say I've had the privilege of sitting on a board with Lisa. We'll go into that, about our mutual passion around trafficking, around keeping kids safe, and around how our paths intersected. And really just what a journey and what a woman I have on my show today. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Hilary, I'm so excited to be able to catch up to you. We have to book podcasts to get a time to catch up with each other. So this is a treat for me too.
I know. And we were just talking before about time and how fast it all of a sudden has been 7 or 8 years since we first met. And we were like, really? That long ago? And I always think about it as there's that COVID time warp where the time of the pandemic where you were like, wait a second, is it pre-COVID, or we're still in it? We're hearing, more and more stories around it's coming back. But, 2.5 years, you kind of are like, wait a second, does that count in on my equation of how long it's been? And yeah, it's crazy, but I'm so excited to have you. And you've got so much incredible information to share. And the one thing that I did not state in your bio that I really want to is you've also had a really incredible TED Talk that when I heard it for the first time and the second time and the third time, how much it impacted me, and how each time I heard it, and it's bringing light to dark places online, I learned more about it. It resonated even more, and it made me fill up with such an anger within me. But we're going to get to that, and we're going to talk a lot about what we can do and what as a parent you can do, and if you have nieces and nephews and anybody around you can do. But I want to start that you've had some really significant relaunches, and significant ones to the point where especially life and death around situations. And I want to go back to your journey along this path and how it's impacted where you are today. So please, let's start with, the first of many relaunches that you've had.
Yeah, so I had a career that was pretty traditional in corporate America for the first 18 years of my career. I came out of an engineering school, probably more because my mom wanted to raise an engineer than I wanted to be one, but came out west to go participate in Silicon Valley and was able to try lots of different roles and things like IT and HR and supply chain management and sales. And I enjoyed that time to try a lot of different things, travel and experience more of the world as a single person. When I got into my 30s is when I really kind of hunkered down and focused on those family building years. So we got married, had a couple babies, and, lo and behold, I have to raise those babies. So being present is pretty important for that. So balancing for the first time being a working mom and having two children under the age of 2 at home to take care of. And that really put me into my first relaunch. So I returned to the tech industry after an 8-year break, coming in when my children turned 2 and 3. And the reason I chose to do that at that time was I was really struggling with being home full time. I wanted to be the kind of person that had enough intellectual stimulation, changing diapers and, pureeing baby food, that it filled my soul. And it was a really good gig for a couple years. And then it just wasn't a fit. And so it was really intimidating to come back in. I had to go learn about all the trends that happened when I was out. Like cloud wasn't a thing the last time I worked in tech.
Wasn't it incredibly surprising for you when you came back and like in such a small amount of time, technology changes so quickly that you're like, wait a second, what? I was really only gone for 2 to 3 years. How could so much have changed? And now I've got to learn the things that have advanced that I didn't know about it. It was crazy. I did that with my after my second pregnancy, because I had twins the first time, and I went and started to do a lot of consulting, and I created one of my first companies with another gal. And I even took just, months off, and it seemed like even during that time, I thought, what the heck? Where is everything going? Why does it seem to be 10xing so fast?
100%. But it, like most things, it's almost like osmosis. Once you're submerged in it for 6 to 9 months, you start talking the same silly acronyms and understand all the language over time. It's just about, sitting in the discomfort long enough to become reintegrated into the process. And so, I spent a couple years doing that, and that served me well. But I also learned a lot more about the impacts of human trafficking on women and children globally. Over that time. And I wanted to do something a little bit more mission oriented than selling servers and storage technology to businesses.
But Lisa, what happened that, because we kind of jumped from like, okay, I'm coming back in, now I'm passionate about women and kids, and
yep.
What happened?
In 2016, I was in Hawaii. I was in a business meeting in an elementary school selling them laptops, explaining some of the technology. And we went into a lockdown for an active shooter on campus. And I spent the next 3 hours writing goodbye letters to my young children and husband, and really, in the fetal. And, those are the moments where you realize what matters to you. And in the midst of that time, an email came through from Intel that they were laying off 12,000 people while we were locked in there. And I just thought, what am I doing with myself? And I had already been working in the anti-trafficking space. I had developed an interest in it from back in my early 20s when I was traveling. I made it to 36 countries before the age of 30 as an IT manager. And so I saw a lot of trafficking happening in front of me. And I always wanted to do something about it when I had a little bit more power in the world. And that was the right intersection point where I realized that there was something more I could do. And I really wanted to focus in more on domestic human trafficking in the US, because it's an international problem. And the more I learned about it was that 72% of trafficking victims in California are actually US citizens. They're between the ages of 12 and 14, the first time that they're groomed by their trafficker and sold. And I felt like there was something more that I could do to improve things in my own community and internationally. And so being locked in that school, I got a lot of clarity that time abundance isn't necessarily a given and that I wanted to do more. And so it really tripled down my commitment towards doing as much as I could to learn the technology of artificial intelligence, because I had seen what it was doing to improve outcomes for healthcare patients and in the areas of personalized cancer treatment and improving outcomes. And I thought, gosh, if we could just use this tool and point it towards marginalized women and children globally, what could we accomplish at scale that has been unachievable for the course of human history? And so I got really used to being the least smart person in the room and convening technologists and data scientists and really helping them to understand what I thought the opportunity was. And it was really my first opportunity to step into a leadership C-suite type of role by, getting people to buy into my vision of what the future could look like. And, it took me from a entrepreneurship journey where we raised $4 million in Intel Corporation to modernize one of the largest international nonprofits in the space, their data center and their processing capabilities alongside Google and Microsoft. And then from there, I knew I couldn't look back and go back to selling servers. I had to step out and lead some innovation on my own terms as an entrepreneur.
So you had this moment in time where you're in that school, you're realizing, potentially that this might not, this might be the end. And it opened your eyes about the violence. It opened your eyes. And you also mentioned, and it was, you threw out some of these statistics that I really want people to realize that, the people in California, the kids that are being trafficked, they are, US citizens. These are not, people that, they don't have the knowledge or they don't have, we're talking like people that you see around that you don't even realize. And one of the things that you had said that I want to go back to is you saw a lot of trafficking right in front of you when you were out doing some business traveling to all those multiple countries. What are the signs for those that, don't really realize like what's going on right in front of them?
Yeah, great question, Hilary. In my 20s, it was pretty obvious to notice when you're seeing teenagers sitting on 50-year-old businessmen's laps in the lobby that something is a little bit off. I would say in the US, they've got really great resources through the Blue campaign around See Something, Say Something. But really, trafficking victims tend to be products of our foster care system or have contact with our child protective services systems. They can be marginalized groups like LGBT+, or also homeless or runaways are targets. Really, what you want to think about is who looks like they're in crisis and could potentially need some help. And, that might be somebody that looks like why aren't they in school when it's a school day in the middle of the day? That doesn't seem right. Or why aren't they speaking for themselves at a restaurant? Why is there an older person speaking on their behalf? Do they look inappropriately dressed? Do they look dirty? Do they look, will they not make eye contact? Looking for those signs, those subtle signs of distress that perhaps they aren't in control of their decisions, can be a really powerful tool. And, with the National Human Trafficking Hotline, it's always a good idea to bias on the side of reporting something that doesn't feel right to you, so that trained people can intervene versus taking it upon yourself. And that's just a text message away for people that want to report that to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And we'll provide the resources for that in the show notes. But
yeah, we'll definitely put those in. And one of the connections, our first connection was both of us were on the board of Three Strands, and Ashley Bryant has created such an incredible organization and nonprofit. And what really came out of a friendship that we also developed around our passion to keep these kids safe and to keep women and to be able to share this, because I think that there's this huge it's almost like don't talk about it. Don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable. Let's not talk about the fact, and you talk about it in your TED talk, that kids are getting phones at 10. That we have these laws in the U.S. about COPPA, the Children's Online Protection Act, that keep kids off of websites that they're not supposed to, but nobody is really monitoring it. I had a company around that, to keep kids safe. You and I had many conversations about, what happens in those situations, what's going on with the parents. And a lot of times these conversations are super, super uncomfortable. For you, you had this brilliant idea of artificial intelligence. We're using it for healthcare. We're using it for all these other things. Why are we not using it to help with a huge problem? And can you let us know what I know there's a industry number of, like, what is it around human trafficking? What is this? What type of, business is this?
Yeah, so from a global perspective, it's estimated that human trafficking is a $150 billion industry whose product is people. This is something that happens internationally. It happens to all socioeconomic levels of people, but traffickers tend to be pretty smart and predatory. So they're looking for victims that don't have a lot of resources to advocate for themselves. So I think a lot of people think of this like the movie Taken, perhaps, which does happen, but much less often than people would likely think it does. But with that said, with the, in 2007, when we got the iPhone and we started to see all those trends of social and mobile and cloud coming in on the follow-on years, the things I had to learn about when I got back into the tech industry, we opened up a lot of opportunities for criminals that have malicious intent to target children and a lot of access. So in the same way that we can build healthy communities online to rally around things that we want to accomplish together, people that have malicious intent and pedophiles can also build communities to talk about how to do their grooming behaviors and entrap more children more effectively as well. And unfortunately, that's what we saw. So I got involved in this work back in about 2013. And at that time, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is a congressionally mandated location for reports of all child sexual abuse material online, received about 500,000 reports for follow-up from law enforcement that year. By the time that I did my TED Talk in 2020, that number was 8 million reports. And unfortunately, it bumped to 16.7 million the following year. So it's one of those things where you can't just keep putting more people on it. You need to leverage the technology tools that the criminals are using to be more efficient to deal with the problem and point it towards, providing those services to the good guys too. And so
that just makes me sick when I start to think about how those numbers literally doubled when you start to get into 8 million, and then we're talking 16 million. I mean,
and we're not talking about, naughty schoolgirl photos here. We are talking about crime scene photos of the worst day of a child's life being shared by adults for their entertainment. I think a lot of people like to water this down in their mind, but 56% of these victims are 6 or under in age. This is not a small problem. And so it really, I felt like, as a leader in technology, as a director of a technology segment at an international company, if someone like me wasn't going to step forward and lead in this space, like, who was coming?
It just, when you say those numbers, 56%, 6 and under, it's just, you want to think that it can't possibly happen. And it is happening. And, as you said, we have to, keep our eyes open instead of, kind of turning away and saying, well, this isn't happening, in my area. And we both know. Yeah, it is.
Everywhere.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I had to reconcile with in myself is, secrets can only live in the dark. There are never going to be enough people to be on the front lines as first responders. We need to start giving them more prevention and proactive tools. We need to educate the public to put more pressure on our platforms to be doing more to protect children. Having, some stated policy in terms and service that you must be 13 to be connected with anyone in the world at any time and no enforceable age gates is not sufficient for sites that are notorious for connecting children with potential exploiters. Things like Omegle, things like TikTok can be misapplied that way. Snapchat can be misapplied that way. Pretty much any platform that's an open community that allows third-party content to be posted can be used for really positive things. And also, if they're not designing for safety by design, pretty negative things as well. And so I like to be a resource across the industry to bring some of the industry best practices. I lead a Data for Good consulting practice for Relaunch Consulting, where I get to work with large brand companies that are dealing with this problem at scale, because this isn't a solo sport. Criminals don't pick one platform to abuse. It's across the industry. And so until regulation can really catch up and really start thinking thoughtfully about how to do more to protect kids, I want to make sure that companies that are investing in doing the right thing are getting the most bang for their buck.
So having been at the helm of a company for 7 years trying to help keep kids safe, I'm always asked, so Hilary, what can I really do? I've got kids. Is the answer not giving kids phones? Is what is that first step? And that's it's like in when we were growing up and parents were like, well, you can't watch TV, and then they go to somebody else's house and then they end up, binge watching, or you can't have junk food and they go somewhere else. That's not the answer. Yeah. What do you recommend to the parents that are listening right now to, that they've got kids in their life that are in this age? What's kind of that first step that you?
Me too, friends. My son turns 10 this month. My daughter's 11. So I can very much relate to all the societal pressures to provide those first phones. I think the first and foremost thing I recommend is delay. So the wait until 8th pledge is something I really support. In terms of not introducing social media until 8th grade, if you can prevent it. I think a lot of technology insiders follow that guideline as much as possible. Secondly, I'm a big fan of teaching your child a technology fire drill, so to speak, which is, we train for emergencies. Like I grew up in the Midwest, we did tornado drills in school, or, you do fire drills and you do all of these activities, even active shooter drills, unfortunately, in schools these days. And the likelihood is there will never be a time that your child actually has to use that training, but we always want to be prepared. On the other hand, the likelihood, but by the time that they turn 18, that they're going to see something online that is inappropriate and not intended for them is like 99.99%. And so I'm really a fan of the process of stop, walk, and talk. When you see something that makes you uncomfortable, stop what you're doing, walk away from your device, and go talk to a trusted adult. Maybe that's a family member, maybe that's a teacher, maybe that's a church leader, someone that can help you put it in context, because kids are very resilient, but secrets can only live in the dark, and traffickers take extreme advantage of fear in children and shame. Nobody likes to talk about that stuff. And so helping your child understand that you are an ally to them and that there's not going to be something that they're going to tell you that you can't handle, I think is really critical. I think the other piece is monitoring, trust but verify, man.
So, you know what, that's so true. And I have to say, one of the things that I feel very, very strongly about is a lot of times people say, well, I'm not going to bring it up until I have to. Like parents are like, I'm not going to really talk about this until, it's time. And I have to say, don't do that. Like, do not put this off, because the more you can start to talk about them when they're, much younger, when they are, that age of, even, start talking when they're 5, 6, like openly discuss it so that it's not, you're hitting them. You don't trust me, mom. You don't trust me, dad. It's not that. It's you've been talking about it so openly that they're like, yeah, this is just, this is what we have to be talking about early so that it's not this like, why are you bringing that up to me now? Like, you're so weird,
Yeah.
mom. You're so weird, dad.
Ew, you're so like,
Yeah, like
I
gross.
get those
What's
looks
happening?
now.
Yeah.
But
So
with that though, Hilary, that's what we learned in doing our product research for our company Minor Guard back in 2018. We did a lot of market and focus group research with teens themselves, as well as pediatricians, school leaders, church officials, all the things. And what we learned was you don't make it through the first week of junior high without receiving a explicit image of maybe a peer. And you probably won't make it through your first week of high school without being asked for one. And so when that's normalized in a whole culture, not having these conversations with your children leaves them flat-footed for these really embarrassing and confusing situations that they may encounter. And what I learned was most kids aren't seeking it. It's getting sent directly to them. And so if you are choosing to give them that technology in the world or let them be in places where they have access to it, which frankly, we're all losing control of that anyways, the schools give it to them, then you have to be willing to be a little uncomfortable and have the conversations.
And that again starts with you as a parent have to be educated as well. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to go to these uncomfortable places to learn about this so that you can start to address these, not the scary things like you can't do this, but to start to be openly talking with the kids. It's so powerful and so important. And I completely agree. I just, what you're doing is amazing. You also had a very scary situation happen over the last couple years with another massive relaunch. And I would love to hear more about that specific one.
So Hilary, before I go to that, I just wanted to make people aware of a resource. I know we talked about some things that can be a bit scary. As a parent myself, it scares me too. And so I put together on my website at lisafee.com. If you go to the area around my TED Talk, you will see videos about how to set up the native parental controls in your Apple iPhone to best protect your children if that's the kind of device they're using. You will also see recommendations for first phones that don't have access to social media or monitoring solutions like Bark when they are ready for those kinds of things in their lives. So I want to give people a wide array of options for whatever fits best for their family, all in one location, including information about where to report if you are aware of a crime that's happening in a light touch way that doesn't have to make you be much more involved than you are capable of being. So there's a lot of resources for nonprofits, there's a lot of resources for tools, and there's a lot of resources for parents just to think through how to be there alongside that journey for their children.
I'm so glad that you are putting that out there. And I also highly, highly, highly recommend everybody watch the TED Talk because it opens your eyes that the one thing we can be is when you're aware and you have the knowledge, then we can help to avoid situations, which is so important for kids to be aware of what's going on. So I think that is so critical.
Yeah, I'd rather be in the trauma prevention business than the trauma cleanup business any day. Right, Hilary?
I think you and I are definitely on the same wave there, right? Gosh, yep. I mean, if we can help with that, that's what it's all about. It's letting people know that this doesn't have to happen.
It doesn't. And I don't want to get any more phone calls from friends about missing children and exploitation. Unfortunately, I'm the person people like to call. And I don't want to field those calls anymore. Don't wait till it's a crisis.
I hear you. No doubt. Okay, so we're going to move into another really significant relaunch that you're still going through right now. Can you share with us what's happening with you?
Sure. So I've had an underlying autoimmune condition that was pretty well managed for quite a while since I had children. But when I contracted COVID in June of 2020, it really amplified a lot of my symptoms and increased new ones. So I've been a COVID long hauler for almost 2 years now, maybe a little bit more. The first thing that I noticed was a lot of the same GI issues I have with my autoimmune condition just being really elevated, and a lot of really extreme chronic fatigue, like can't get out of bed kinds of chronic fatigue. I lost half my hearing in my left ear. I suddenly,
And it has not come back.
no, my hearing aids come in next week.
Oh, Lisa, that means that you have literally had this ongoing, all of the results of COVID have continued for you for over 2 years.
Yeah, I have a team of 10 specialists that keep me upright and keep me moving forward. And I'm really grateful that I've gotten the right medical team around me. It took multiple years to get here. And so I want to fast track that process for anyone else that's living with long COVID, where I can be of service and help. Please feel free to reach out. There's some great online communities out there where you can learn a lot more. But with that in mind, it is pretty devastating to lose your health. And I had to make a reset on who I was going to be in the world based on learning to live within my energy budget that's here today. And that's usually about 2 good hours a day. That's about what I have for creative endeavors and highly active things. It's up from an hour a day a year ago.
And for those that could have know or did know you a couple years ago, you were like the Energizer Bunny.
I have been described that way.
You had so much energy, girl. I mean, we have worked together. You were, boom, 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 boom. And so this has to have been so devastating to you.
I have a pretty traditional profile for being an entrepreneur. So when you think about that grit and that hustle, that's the culture that I came from. But luckily, it wasn't my first foray with burnout. It wasn't the first time my body was sending me signals that something had to change. And so it really motivated me and inspired me to start writing my book, The Career Cleanse, which I'm currently working on to launch in 2024. Which is
Career
really about,
Cleanse.
Yeah.
Great name.
Thank you. It's about how to go from burnout to more sustainable living in your work and your life. I'm really writing this book for my compadres of Gen X and millennial women that are looking to define their own happiness and their own career legacies. And playing the game the way that it was set up for us isn't serving them very well, and redefining the rules. And I've had to do that a couple times when I transitioned from corporate America into entrepreneurship, when I transitioned from being a company founder to being an employee of the company that acquired my company, and then from becoming a management consultant and keynote speaker 3 months before I lost my health, and having to make that adjustment. So I've had a lot of lived experience as to tap into my mission and my values and learn to put the focus on the moments that matter, so that I can be the person I want to be for myself, for my family, for my business, and for my friends. So I'm at a place now where I'm stable enough that I can be grateful for this reminder. But when the bricks are hitting you over the head that something has to change, it doesn't feel that enjoyable in the moment.
No. And the way you say, moments that matter. And I know that even doing this interview is something that you have to, dig deep, keep your energy, keep your conversation in that, all the different directions that we've gone today. And you've done such an incredible job. And I look at you, I admire you. I'm so excited to read your book when it is here. And I think that you let me know and we'll get you back on and we'll talk more about it. But I want to say thank you for, everything that you have done up to this point. And I just know that the next part will even be more impactful for everything that you are planting the seeds to be able to bring out into the world here over the next couple of years. And You had something exciting happen with your health. Can you tell us a little good news that happened today?
Yeah. Well, last week I got my second immunosuppressive infusion through my medical care provider, and I'm starting to regain some of the brain fog is starting to go away, and some of the energy levels are starting to rise up. So I'm really hopeful that as I progress in onboarding this treatment, that perhaps there might be a new normal reset for me than the one I've been accustomed to the last couple of years.
And for those that don't know what that is, or why would you start to do that? Can you explain a little bit before we sign off here?
Sure. Well, I'm just following the direction of my doctors, and based on the rare conditions that I have, this is the right level of medicine to stop my body from attacking its own healthy cells in my vascular system, so that I can function more optimally. But it's moments like these, Hilary, that I actually look forward to. Yes, they do take more energy maybe than other parts, but I don't think anybody wants to feel in their mid-40s like they're put out to pasture. I'm at the prime of my career, and I have so much experience to share, especially with people that are maybe coming up behind me as women entrepreneurs, as women in STEM, as leaders who have struggled with balancing family life and work life. And that's what I'm so excited about in terms of podcasting and writing and keynote speaking, is being that visible role model of a working mom whose kids actually know her and is on her first husband still, and is what got me here won't get me there. I can't be a yes and a pleaser to everyone anymore. I have to be ruthless with my prioritization, and being able to be on a platform like this where we can maybe touch, people at more than one person at a time, that you don't have to be stuck in something that isn't serving you any longer, is a real honor. And I think you're a living example of that with everything you do with your relaunch workshops and consulting and coaching. You give so much hope to so many. And I just hope that maybe one or two people can see themselves in my story and, get out of something that is just draining their battery morning, noon, and night into something that makes them feel alive and makes them want to get out of bed.
Lisa, you are such an inspiration. I'm literally choked up because I have seen your journey, and I'm just so blessed to have you as a friend, and I'm so impressed by you. I want to reach out and give you this big hug, and I'm so happy that you have, a little bit more energy based on the treatment. And I know that when we were jumping on, we were laughing about the idea of, hey, I always end and I always kind of wrap up with, what do you recommend? What do you want to give out to the world that they need to try? And based on your journey over the last couple of years, you've come up with something that I'd love for you to share.
Well, this might sound really silly to others, but it's been a game changer for me. So I thought I'd share in case it's of service to anyone else, especially busy working parents. I was slow to the game of adopting curbside delivery for things at places like Target. I now do all my grocery shopping online and just swoop up my groceries or grab that last minute present for the kid's birthday party down the street, or even, buy a solid colored shirt that'll look okay on camera when I have to do these kinds of conversations at curbside pickup at Target. And what that's done for me as an immunocompromised person in the world is given me access to be able to still have all the things I need to be successful, but in a way that doesn't increase my risk of not being here for my friends and family. And so I actually just really encourage you to look at the places where you repetitively spend a lot of time, and if there's a way to streamline that for yourself, to consider making a shift, because I'm actually somebody that loves grocery shopping, but it hasn't been accessible to me in the same way the last year or two, and I don't want to use an hour of my good 2 hours in a day, just getting groceries. So rolling up and having somebody else put them in my trunk felt a little weird at first, but goodness, it frees me up to write. It frees me up to take my kids to theater auditions. It frees me up to cheer my son on at the soccer game. And those are the moments that matter. So
you know why I love this one the most is that time management. You're saying, hey, I've got other things that are more important than going and spending the hour plus doing all this. You're just, you drive up, you get them, and you're off. I think it's a good one for all of us to be able to take back a little bit of our time during the week. And it's a good reminder. Lisa, yes. Thank you for being here. And again, we're going to put everything in the show notes, but how can people get in touch with you? You so kindly said, hey, there's, anybody who needs on so many different levels, sure, guidance and assistance, reach out. How can they do that? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the first and foremost place you can go to is my website, lisathea.com. If you're looking for keynote speakers, I speak on the topics of embracing AI for digital transformation. I also have all of my TED Talk up there for anybody that's looking to learn more about how to keep their kids safer online and in real life. I am also very active on LinkedIn, so you're more than welcome to connect with me there. You can see the podcast that I host, Navigating Forward, on all the places you get podcasts, where I talk about with technology luminaries and innovators around what they're seeing in their respective fields, if you want to learn more about that. Or you can watch the web series that I host called Navigating Abroad, where we try to be the technology Anthony Bourdain. It's my goal. I want to bring really interesting founders and really interesting leaders from around the world, more awareness of the really cool things they're doing in AI that are advancing society.
So cool. I love that. Next thing I can binge on. I think that this could be it. I'll bring it to E's attention, my husband. Okay. A big hug to you. Thank you for being on the show today. And I am excited to hear over the next few months, 6 months, when your book is done. And I'm excited to get that, one of those first copies. Thanks,
Absolutely.
my friend, for being here. You take care.
Thank you, Hilary.